Welcome back to Today's Verdict. I'm your host, David Lesh. We are always encouraging you to stay connected. Tweet me at David Lesh. With less than a week away from Election Day, advocates rallied outside the Board of Elections, demanding a more accessible voting process for incarcerated people on Rikers Island. Here to tell us more is attorney Anthony Posada from the Legal Aid Society. Anthony, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, David.
The last time we talked to each other, we were virtually, so it's nice to see you in the studio.
It's a pleasure to be back.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about voting when you're incarcerated. First things first, you still have the right to vote, am I correct?
That's what's most important, David, is that people who are at Rikers Island, the majority of them, of the 5,000 plus people there, have not been sentenced.
Right, and if you're not sentenced, you're not convicted of let's say, a felony where you might not have the right to vote, right? You still have all the rights that anybody else, like you and I, might have that were a citizen of the United States, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when somebody is waiting for sentencing, which happens so many times, right? And they're on parole, or they're waiting to be paroled, or they violated parole, and they're in Rikers waiting for a determination, and Election Day comes up. What's the process that usually goes forward for these inmates? Do they say, oh, okay, it's Election Day, let me take you out of your cell and take you to a voting booth? How does it usually work for them?
No, it's nothing like that, David. In fact, it's just filled with barriers. Okay. Because what happens is that people are restricted to just voting by absentee ballot. But it's not as if people who are there can just go to a specific place within their housing area and pick up an absentee ballot. What they have to rely on is the efforts that we have been putting on, along with the Department of Corrections, where we go with groups of volunteers to help people get registered. And then the Department of Corrections has to take those registrations and ferry them over to the Board of Election local offices to make sure that they give them back the ballots. And then there's a follow-up process to locate the people who registered to vote and give them their actual ballots so that they can cast their votes. And so as you can see, right, there's so many steps in the process, and so many people get left out, people who don't even know they can vote. So
it's not the process of you just take them to a voting booth and have them, no, it doesn't work that way.
Absolutely not.
It's registering them and then making sure that they're qualified, and then once they're qualified, getting them a ballot, filling out a ballot, getting the ballot to the, I mean, there's so many different steps here. What would you recommend to streamline the process?
What we did this week was call on the Board of Elections to ensure that there's equitable voting access at Rikers Island by setting up a polling site there. We know that the Board of Elections, and we saw this during the pandemic, put out technology that allows for early voting so that people can go, even if I'm not within my district, I can go and show up at a site and they can print out my ballot, right? It covers multiple districts. And so if we had similar efforts happening at Rikers Island, so many more people would be able to vote while there. And this way they wouldn't be disenfranchised.
What percentage can you say are at Rikers Island that is entitled to be able to vote?
About 90%.
90%. So there are 90% of the people who are there have the right to vote. And what percentage of those 90 do you think do vote?
By a modest estimate, maybe like 15%.
15%, and
right.
You said there were about 5,000 people there. Am I
about
correct?
5,200,
so
yeah.
Only 15% of close to the 5,000 people.
And that's being generous.
And that's being generous.
Yeah.
And who is it affecting?
It's primarily black and brown communities. People of color are the ones who are being disenfranchised as a result of this cycle of suppression. Because if the BOE does not step up, if they don't come into the table and actually assist by setting up a polling site, then we're just left with the same process, which is in itself so truncated.
Well, let's talk about the rally. You recently had a rally.
Yes.
Tell the viewers a little bit about it, if you could.
So we were outside of the offices of the Board of Elections, demanding that they actually come to the table and discuss with us how we can make sure that people at Rikers Island have equitable access to voting, how they could have an opportunity to serve people who are there who are still eligible to vote so that they can take part in our democracy.
We have pictures up now which shows the viewers what the rally looked like. Was it a success? Were there things that you would have done differently at the rally?
No, I would say we were able to get the message across. We were joined there by the other members of the coalition of New York City voting in jails. And a lot of media outlets picked up on the message that we were trying to convey. I guess the goal, David, is really to have the Board of Elections actually respond to the letter that we sent them so that they can actually listen to what we're saying and come to the table to discuss with us how we can change this process.
What about litigation? Does it look like this is going to get into the courts at some point? Is there some violation of, the 14th Amendment, the equal rights protections? Where is this heading?
We're not there yet, but we have been thinking about...
But can you get there is what I'm asking.
We're thinking about legislation. We're thinking about actually having laws and policies on the books that say that the Board of Elections has to do this. We want to start exploring that, and we have been looking into that.
And do you think you're going to get pushback from the Assembly, pushback from the Senate? Where is that going to happen?
We will get pushback, David. I mean, so many people don't want to just forget the people that are at Rikers Island, or immediately say if they're there, it's because they committed a crime. But they're unsentenced. They haven't been proven guilty of anything. And so there will obviously be resistance to making this happen. But with consistent efforts, with making sure that the pressure is always put on them, I'm sure that we can get a change happen. This is done in other jurisdictions. And in Chicago, in Cook County, Illinois, the state passed a law, and now they have voting across their jails.
All right, somebody's watching today, let's say, and they know they have a son or a daughter, unfortunately, or a sister or a brother who's incarcerated in Rikers. What would you tell them in terms of giving the ability of their family member the ability to vote? Like, what would you tell them to do, if anything?
First of all, I would tell their loved ones that I understand what's happening to the person that's incarcerated, given the current situation at Rikers Island, where up to date 18 people have died, David, and so it's tough. At the same time, if they are interested in voting while they're there, and they should be voting, they should reach out to the guards that are located in each housing unit, and tell them, I'm interested in voting. And this will, if they say this, right, at least we will get word that they are interested, and we will go to that housing unit and seek to register them to vote.
Good stuff. Anthony, I want to thank you for being here, and again, for being our second guest live in the studio.
Thank you, David.
It's our pleasure. All right, we have to take a quick break, but up next, advocates say the Adams administration has slowed to a crawl on bus lane construction. More when we come back.